The copper scent of fresh blood always hit me before the visual did. It was a metallic, heavy smell that usually commanded my professional detachment. But tonight, as I stepped over the threshold of a luxury loft in the Heights, the smell did not trigger my clinical curiosity. It triggered a primal, agonizing scream in the depths of my soul. There, sprawled across the white Carrara marble of the kitchen island, was a young man I recognized. He was the captain of the local varsity swim team, and pinned to the underside of his throat, snagged in the torn fabric of his polo shirt, was a silver earring shaped like a crescent moon. I had bought that exact pair of earrings for my daughter, Chloe, for her 17th birthday exactly 3 days ago. My partner, Miller, was already grunting as he snapped photos of the arterial spray. He did not notice me freeze. He did not see the way the world tilted on its axis, turning the crime scene into a kaleidoscope of nightmare. I am Eleanor Vance, the lead forensic investigator for the city's major crimes unit. I have spent 20 years putting monsters behind bars with the cold, hard logic of DNA and fiber analysis. And in 10 seconds, I realized I was about to become the monster's architect. "Hey, Elle, you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost," Miller said, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. "Fine," I croaked. The word felt like swallowing broken glass. It's a mess, Miller. Start with the perimeter. I'll take the immediate vicinity of the body." "You sure? You usually like the big picture first." "Just do it, Miller," I snapped, more sharply than I intended. He shrugged and moved toward the balcony. I was alone with the victim for 60 seconds. 60 seconds to decide if I was a cop or a mother. I did not even have to think. I reached down, my gloved fingers trembling so violently I feared I'd drop my tweezers. I did not use the tools. I used my hand, shielding the motion with my body, and ripped the silver crescent moon from the boy's collar. The fabric tore with a sickening pop. I shoved the earring into the secret lining of my kit bag, the metal burning against my thigh through the canvas. But the earring was just the beginning. As I knelt, my eyes, trained by decades of searching for the invisible, saw the devastation. There were footprints in the blood, small footprints, size 38, Chloe size. The tread was a specific pattern from a limited edition sneaker I had stood in line for 4 hours to buy her. I looked at the spray on the cabinets. It was not just a struggle, it was an execution. I felt a wave of nausea. My little girl, who cried when she stepped on a snail in the driveway, had done this? No, it was impossible. Someone had framed her. Or it was an accident. It had to be an accident. "Elle, I found something out here," Miller shouted from the balcony. I panicked. I grabbed the spray bottle of luminol, and instead of using it to find blood, I purposefully tipped over a heavy ceramic vase filled with lilies. Water and flower foam flooded across the floor, washing directly over the bloody footprints. "Damn it!" I yelled, feigning a trip. "Miller, I'm so sorry. I slipped. I've contaminated the primary floor quadrant." Miller came running back, cursing under his breath. "Elle, what the hell? That's rookie stuff. You just wiped out the stride pattern." I know, I said, my voice rising in a pitch of fake hysteria. "I'm exhausted. I have not slept. I'll fix it. I'll process what's left." I spent the next 3 hours processing the scene. In reality, I was a ghost, haunting my own investigation. Every time I found a strand of long, blonde hair, I tucked it into my palm and ate the evidence of her presence, swallowing the fibers until my throat felt constricted. I swapped out the swabs. I intentionally mislabeled the blood samples from the door handle, marking them as victim's own before they could even be tested. I was a master of my craft, and tonight, my craft was erasure. When I finally pulled into my driveway at 4 in the morning, the house was dark. My heart was a drum in a hollow chest. I walked straight to Chloe's room. The door was ajar. I I pushed it open, expecting to see her sleeping, dreaming of school and boys and normal things. The bed was empty. The bathroom door was closed, and I could hear the sound of rhythmic scrubbing. I pushed it open. Chloe was on her knees on the tile floor, wearing nothing but an oversized t-shirt. She was scrubbing a pair of sneakers in the bathtub with a toothbrush. The water swirling down the drain was a pale, sickly pink. She did not jump. She did not scream. She just looked up at me, her blue eyes, my eyes, void of any light. "You're home late, Mom," she said quietly. "Chloe," I whispered, leaning against the doorframe for support. "What have you done?" "He would not stop, Mom. He thought he could own me because of who his father is. He thought he could say whatever he wanted." She went back to scrubbing. Her movements were methodical, professional. "Did you find my earring?" I realized I lost it halfway home. The casualness of her question chilled me more than the crime scene had. She was not asking if I found it as a mother. She was asking as a suspect checking on her accomplice. "I found it," I said, my voice trembling. "I found the footprints too. I destroyed them. I ruined the DNA samples. Chloe, I have burned my entire life to the ground tonight for you." She stood up, dripping wet sneakers in hand. She walked over and hugged me. She smelled like bleach and expensive perfume. "I knew you would. You always said you'd do anything for me." "We have to get rid of these," I said, grabbing the shoes. "And the clothes. Everything." "I already burned the clothes in the neighbor's fire pit," she said with a small, terrifying smile. "They're having that bonfire tomorrow, so there's plenty of ash already." I looked at my daughter and felt a flicker of something I did not want to name. It was not just fear for her, it was fear of her. She was 17, but she had the composure of a veteran. I told myself it was shock. It had to be shock. The next day at the station was a gauntlet of fire. The victim was Marcus Thorne, the son of the deputy mayor. The pressure was astronomical. The chief was in our lab every 20 minutes, demanding results. "We got a hit on the partial DNA from the fingernail scrapings," Miller announced, hovering over the computer monitor. My heart stopped. I had not been able to get to the fingernail scrapings. They were bagged before I arrived. "And?" I asked, gripping the edge of my desk so hard my knuckles turned white. "It's weird," Miller frowned. "It's a 50% match to the system. Suggests a first-degree relative of someone in the database. But the markers are messy. It's almost like it's contaminated," I interrupted, stepping in front of the screen. "Look at these alleles, Miller. They're degraded, probably from the cleaning fluids used in the loft. We cannot trust this. If we bring this to the DA, they'll laugh us out of court, and the deputy mayor will have our badges. But it's a lead. If we run a familial search—" "I'll do it," I said firmly. "I'll run the search manually tonight. You go home, get some sleep. You've been on this for 18 hours. I watched him leave, feeling the weight of the lie growing heavier. I sat down at the terminal. I had the power to point the finger anywhere. I looked at the database. I needed a scapegoat. I needed someone who was already a criminal, someone who had no one to fight for them. I found a file. Simon Vane, a local drifter with a history of violent outbursts and a blood type that matched the messy sample I'd fabricated. I spent the next 4 hours digitalizing a trail. I planted his name in the tip line logs. I altered the timestamp on a nearby CCTV feed, just a few frames, just enough to show a blurry figure of his height and build crossing the street 2 blocks from the loft. I was no longer just protecting Chloe. I was framing an innocent man. As the sun began to rise on the second day, I realized I had crossed a line from which there was no return. I was not just a mother saving her child. I was a criminal using the law as a weapon. I went into the evidence locker and took the silver earring out of my bag. I did not destroy it. I could not. It was the last piece of the daughter I thought I knew. I placed it in a small plastic bag and hid it inside the drywall of my office, behind the filing cabinet. When I got home, Chloe was sitting at the kitchen table, eating cereal and watching the news. The headline was about the manhunt for Marcus Thorne's killer. "They're looking for a drifter," she said, her voice light. "You did a good job, Mom." I sat down across from her, my face ashen. "Chloe, tell me the truth. Why did you really go there? This was not just a fight about him being mean, was it?" She put down her spoon and leaned in. For a second, the mask slipped. "He had a video, Mom, of me, of something I did last summer at the lake. He was going to post it. I could not let him. Everything you worked for, the perfect daughter image, it would have been gone." "What did you do at the lake, Chloe?" She just smiled, a thin, sharp line. "Does not matter now, does it? You fixed it." A cold dread settled in my stomach. The video sounded like a motive, but the way she said it, it felt like another hook. I realized then that I did not know who was sitting across from me. I had saved her life, but I had lost my daughter. Or perhaps I had finally met her. The manhunt for Simon Vane was like watching a movie I had directed, but could no longer stop. By Tuesday morning, his face was on every digital billboard in the city. Miller was obsessed. He had a sixth sense for inconsistencies. And as the lead investigator, my job was now to dull that sense without him noticing. I walked into the bullpen and found him staring at the CCTV footage I had altered. He was leaning so close to the screen, his breath fogged the glass. "Elle, look at frame 4212, he said, not looking up. "The shadow. It does not track with the street lamp on the corner. It jumps 3 pixels to the left in a single millisecond." My heart did a slow, heavy roll in my chest. "It's a cheap digital sensor, Miller. Compression artifacts. You know how these budget security systems are. They drop frames when the light level changes." "Maybe," Miller muttered, rubbing his jaw. "But the blood work came back from the second sweep. You know, the samples you labeled as contaminated? I ran them anyway through the new high-sensitivity sequencer. It's not just Vane's profile, Elle. There's a second contributor, female, and the familial marker, it's still shouting at us." I sat down, my legs feeling like lead. "What are you saying, Miller?" "I'm saying the system thinks the killer is related to a cop," he whispered, turning his chair toward me. "The chief wants everyone in the unit to submit a voluntary DNA sample, to clear the air before the deputy mayor calls for a federal oversight committee." The room felt like it was shrinking. The voluntary sample was a death warrant. If I refused, I was a suspect. If I gave it, Chloe was a ghost in the machine. "It's an insult," I said, my voice hardening. "We've spent 20 years together. If the chief wants my DNA, he can get a warrant." Miller looked at me for a long time. The trust that had built up over 2 decades was beginning to fray, a single thread snapping at a time. "Why are you being so defensive, Elle? It's just a swab. Unless there's a reason you're worried about the results." I did not answer. I grabbed my coat and left the station, the air outside feeling like ice against my burning face. I did not go home. I drove to the outskirts of the city, to a dilapidated motel where the city's shadows congregated. I had an envelope of cash and a burner phone. I needed Simon Vane to disappear, not just from the streets, but from the world. If he was caught and he had a solid alibi for that night, my digital trail would be scrutinized. And if they scrutinized the trail, they would find my signature on the edits. I met a man named Silas in the parking lot. He was a cleaner of a different sort, someone who dealt with problems that could not be scrubbed away with bleach. "The drifter," I said, handing him the envelope, "he's a liability to the city. He's violent. He needs to be relocated. Permanently." Silas counted the money without looking at it. You're a cop, Vance. You know the price of a permanent relocation is higher than this. There's another 10,000 when the news reports his body was found in a warehouse with a self-inflicted wound and a confession note. I replied. My voice did not even shake. I was amazed at how quickly I had learned to speak the language of the underworld. I'll need his location, Silas said. He's hiding in the old cannery district, third pier. I tracked his burner phone signal an hour ago. I had tracked it because I was the one who had surreptitiously given the phone to Vane 3 days ago under the guise of a charity outreach while he was sleeping in the park. I had literally hand-delivered him to his own execution. When I returned home, the house was eerily quiet. I found Chloe in the kitchen, carefully cutting out newspaper clippings of the murder. She had made a collage on the dining table. It looked like a school project, but the subject was the death of Marcus Thorne. He was so handsome, she remarked, pointing to a photo of the victim. It's a shame he was such a liar. Chloe, stop this, I said, sweeping the clippings onto the floor. The police are asking for DNA samples. They're closing in. I've had to do things, terrible things, to keep them away from you. She looked at the mess on the floor and then back at me. Her expression was one of mild disappointment. You're stressed, Mom. You should take a bath. I'll handle the dinner. You'll handle it? Chloe, you killed a human being. You took a life. She stepped toward me, her presence suddenly overwhelming. She was taller than me now, or at least it felt that way. I took a problem and I removed it. Is it not that what you do? You find the bad guys and you take them off the board. Marcus was a bad guy. He was going to hurt our family. I saved us. The logic was so distorted, so chillingly similar to my own justifications, that I could not speak. I realized that she was not hiding behind me. She was using me as a shield she had built years ago. Every time I had excused her behavioral issues in middle school, every time I had talked her way out of a shoplifting charge or a fight, I had been tempering the blade that was now held to the throat of my soul. The phone rang. It was Miller. Elle, you need to get to the cannery district. Now, we got a tip on Vane. But something's wrong. It's a bloodbath. I drove like a madwoman, my sirens screaming through the night. When I arrived, the pier was swarming with black and whites. The smell of salt and rust was overwhelmed by the smell of gunpowder. I pushed through the crowd. Silas had been efficient, but he had been sloppy. Simon Vane was dead, yes. A gun was in his hand, and a typed note was tucked into his pocket. But Miller was standing over a second body. It was Silas. Looks like a deal gone wrong, Miller said, his eyes tracking me as I approached. Vane must have had a partner. Someone hired this guy to kill Vane, but Vane got a shot off before he went down. Or maybe the partner decided to clean up both of them. Miller leaned in close, his voice a whisper that only I could hear. Funny thing, Elle, I found this in the professional's pocket. He held up a small evidence bag. Inside was a scrap of paper with a phone number written on it. My work extension. I did not think you worked with guys like this, Miller said. The friendship was gone. There was only the predator and the prey now. I checked the logs. You called a burner phone from your office 3 times today. The same burner found on Vane's body. I was running an informant, Miller. I was trying to get a lead. Without logging it? Without a backup? That's not you, Elle. That's never been you. He stepped back and looked at the crime scene, then at me. I'm not going to the chief yet, out of respect for the 20 years we spent in the trenches. But I'm going to your house. I want to talk to Chloe. I want to see the girl you're so desperate to protect that you'd hire a hitman. Miller, do not, I pleaded, grabbing his arm. She has nothing to do with this. Then you won't not mind if I ask her a few questions. He shook my hand off and walked toward his car. I stood in the rain, watching his taillights disappear. I had 2 choices. I could let him go and hope Chloe could lie her way out, or I could stop him. I looked at the service weapon at my hip. The metal felt cold, inviting. I jumped into my car and raced after him. The streets were a blur of neon and gray. I was a mile from my house when I saw Miller's car pulled over on the shoulder. The door was open. The interior light was on. I skidded to a halt and ran toward the vehicle, my heart in my throat. Miller! He was not in the driver's seat. I looked toward the woods lining the road. A flashlight flickered among the trees. I ran toward it, tripping over roots and brambles. I found him in a small clearing. He was on his knees, clutching his stomach. Blood was leaking through his fingers, dark and thick in the moonlight. Standing over him was Chloe. She was holding my old tactical knife, the one I kept in the glove box for emergencies. He was going to ruin everything, Mom, she said, her voice as calm as a summer lake. He would not stop asking questions. He said he knew about the silver earring. Chloe. Oh God, Chloe. I collapsed beside Miller. He was gasping, his eyes wide with shock. Elle, he wheezed. Your daughter, she's... I know, I sobbed, trying to staunch the wound. I know, Miller. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Chloe stood there, watching us with a curious detachment. We have to move him, Mom. The car is right there. If we put him in the trunk and drive it into the lake, it'll look like he disappeared while chasing a lead, just like Vane. I looked up at her, and for the first time, I did not see my child. I saw a predator that I had fed and sheltered. She was not saving herself anymore. She was enjoying the game, and I was her most valuable tool. Help me, I whispered, my voice breaking. Of course, Mom, she said, reaching out a bloody hand to pull me up. We're a team, remember? This is the final segment of your story, the last 2,000 words. It covers the third act, the ultimate cleanup, and the devastating revelation that shatters the mother's reality. Part 3, the final erasure. The lake was a black mirror, swallowing the silver moonlight and Miller's sedan with a rhythmic, gulping sound that I knew would haunt my sleep until the day I died. We stood on the muddy bank, mother and daughter, watching the bubbles rise to the surface. I felt a hollow emptiness where my conscience used to be. I had moved a body. I had cleaned the back seat of a police vehicle with professional-grade chemicals stolen from my own lab. I was no longer a crime scene investigator. I was the crime. It's done, Chloe said, tossing the tactical knife into the water. It sank with a tiny, insignificant splash. Now we just go home and sleep. Tomorrow, Miller is just another missing person who got too close to a dangerous case. I looked at her, truly looked at her, in the pale light. Her face was serene. There was no sweat on her brow, no tremor in her hands. She looked like she had just finished a difficult exam, not a double homicide. We drove back in my car in a silence so thick it felt like drowning. The next 48 hours were a blur of orchestrated grief. When Miller did not show up for shift, I was the one who suggested we check his last known GPS coordinates. I was the one who directed the search teams away from the lake and toward the industrial shipyards, claiming I had found a lead in his notes about a dock worker. I led the department on a wild goose chase, my heart hammering every time a radio crackled. By Friday, the tension at the station was unbearable. The chief was a broken man, losing his best detective and his star witness in the same week. I sat in my office, the silver earring still hidden in the wall behind me, staring at the case file of Marcus Thorne. Something was gnawing at me. It was a professional instinct that I could not suppress, even when my life depended on it. I pulled up the autopsy photos of Marcus Thorne one last time. I looked at the angle of the entry wound in his neck. I looked at the bruising on his shoulders. Wait, I whispered to the empty room. The bruising was consistent with a struggle, but the grip pattern was wrong. The marks were large, too large for Chloe's slender hands. And the angle of the blade, the killer had to be at least 6 feet tall to strike with that downward force. Chloe was 5 feet 4. My breath hitched. If Chloe had not killed him, why had she confessed? Why had she been scrubbing her shoes? Why was she so willing to kill Miller to keep the secret? I stood up and walked to the evidence locker. I needed to see the original, unedited CCTV footage from the neighbor's house, the one I had claimed was corrupted. I had kept a backup on a hidden thumb drive, intending to destroy it later. I plugged it into my laptop, my hands shaking. I scrubbed through the footage, minute by minute, until I hit the timestamp of the murder. I saw a figure enter the loft. It was not Chloe. It was a man. A tall man in a dark hoodie. He stayed inside for 10 minutes. When he emerged, he was carrying a bag. 2 minutes later, Chloe appeared on the screen. She was running toward the loft, looking frantic. She went inside. She stayed for 5 minutes. When she came out, she was covered in blood, stumbling, looking like the terrified girl I wanted her to be. She had not killed Marcus. She had found him. Then why the lie? Why the cold-blooded execution of Miller? I drove home like a ghost was chasing me. I burst through the front door, slamming it against the wall. Chloe was in the living room, painting her nails a deep, blood red. "Who was he, Chloe?" I screamed, throwing the thumb drive onto the coffee table. "I saw the footage. You did not kill Marcus. You found him. Who was the man in the hoodie?" Chloe did not look up from her nails. She blew on them gently, the red polish glistening. "You finally looked at the raw data, Mom. I wondered how long your professional pride would let that corrupted file stand. Who was he?" "His name is Julian," she said, her voice dropping to a low, melodic hum. "He's 24. We met online months ago. He's like me, Mom. He understands that the world is full of people who do not deserve the space they occupy. Marcus was just the first project. Julian did the work, and I helped with the cleanup. It was a test." "A test?" I felt the floor falling away. "A test for you," she said, finally looking up. Her eyes were terrifyingly bright. "I needed to know if you were actually as good as everyone says. And more importantly, I needed to know if you would choose me over your precious law. Julian said a mother's love is a myth, a social construct. I told him my mother was different. I told him you'd burn the world for me." She stood up and walked over to me, placing her small, red-tipped fingers on my cheeks. "And you did, Mom. You killed Simon Vane. You helped me get rid of Miller. You're a multiple-time felon now. You're one of us." "I am nothing like you," I choked out, tears streaming down my face. "Oh, but you are," she whispered, "because now you have to choose again. You see, Julian is upstairs. He's been staying in the guest room for 3 days, and he's a bit of a loose end. He thinks I'm going to run away with him tonight." She leaned in, her breath warm against my ear. "But I do not want to run away with a drifter, Mom. I like my life. I like our house. And since you're so good at making people disappear, I thought you could help me with Julian. He's in the shower. My tactical knife is in the kitchen drawer, the one you did not throw in the lake." I pushed her away, revulsion rising in my throat. "I'm calling it in. All of it. I'll go to prison, but I will not let you do this anymore." Chloe did not look scared. She just reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. She pressed play on a voice recording. It was my voice from the lake, clear and crisp. "I know, Miller. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Help me move him. If I go down, you go down for Miller," Chloe said, her voice flat. "And you know what happens to dirty cops in women's prison, Mom? They do not last a week. But if we handle Julian, we're clean. 3 deaths, all blamed on a dead drifter and a missing detective. The perfect crime." I looked at the kitchen drawer. I looked at the stairs leading to the guest room. I thought about the 20 years I had spent seeking justice, the thousands of hours I had spent under fluorescent lights looking for the truth. It was all gone. There was no Eleanor Vance anymore. There was only the accomplice. I walked to the kitchen. My hand hovered over the drawer handle. "That's my girl," Chloe whispered from the doorway. I pulled the drawer open and gripped the handle of the knife. I felt the weight of it, the balance. I turned around, and for a split second, I saw a flicker of something in Chloe's eyes. Not love, but a terrifying kind of respect. I did not go upstairs. I looked at my daughter, the monster I had birthed, and the monster I had created through my own silence. I realized that as long as I lived, as long as I protected her, the killing would never stop. I was the enabler. I was the source of her power. I raised the knife. "Mom," Chloe's voice finally had a hint of uncertainty. "What are you doing? The guest room is upstairs." "I know," I said, my voice sounding like it was coming from miles away. "But the problem is not upstairs, Chloe. The problem is right here." I did not kill her. I could not. Instead, I drove the knife deep into my own shoulder, twisting it until I screamed, making sure I hit the brachial artery. Blood sprayed across the white kitchen floor, the same white as the marble in the loft. "Mom!" Chloe shrieked, rushing toward me. I fell to the floor, using my good hand to dial 911 on my cell phone. When the operator answered, I did not report a murder. I did not report a crime. "My daughter," I gasped into the phone, my vision blurring as the blood loss began to take hold. "My daughter, she just stabbed me. She's the one. She killed them all. Please, help me." Chloe froze. She looked at the phone, then at me, then at her own hands, which were now covered in my blood. The recording on her phone would not save her now. I had just created the ultimate crime scene, one that even I could not erase. I was the victim, she was the attacker, and the house was filled with the DNA of a dozen crimes I had helped her hide. You killed yourself to catch me?" she whispered, her face pale with horror. "No," I whispered, feeling the cold darkness closing in. "I'm saving you, Chloe. I'm putting you where you cannot hurt anyone else. It's the last thing a mother can do." As the sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder and louder, I saw the front door burst open. It was not the police. It was Julian, the man in the hoodie, stepping out of the shadows of the stairs. He did not look at me. He looked at Chloe, then at the blood on her hands, and he smiled. "Good job, C," he said, stepping over my dying body. "I did not think you had it in you to take out the pro. Let's go. The car's running." Chloe looked at him, then back at me. She did not hesitate. She did not cry. She just stepped over my outstretched hand, leaving a bloody footprint on the tile, the same size 38 tread I had tried so hard to erase. They walked out the door together as the first police cruisers pulled into the driveway. I lay there on the floor, watching the red and blue lights flash against the ceiling, realizing my final sacrifice was for nothing. I had not trapped her. I had just given her the final push she needed to leave the world of the living and enter the world of the ghosts. My last thought, before the light went out for good, was of the silver earring in my office wall. It was the only piece of the truth left in the world, and now no one would ever find it.